Okay, Wednesday instead of Thursday this week. Thanks to all who were able to join for Yechezkel chapter 12, Ezekiel chapter 12, the unit which we ended last week, which we started last year or earlier this year in the springtime and paused for the summer, goes from chapter 8 to chapter 11. And it's a vision in which Ezekiel, sitting in exile in Babylonia, is transported in a vision to Jerusalem, and he sees various idolatry. He sees punishment being carried out against the city, and he's disturbed by everything that he sees. And then the final piece in our last chapter, again further this complicated metaphor we saw about the pot and the meat, and the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem not realizing what fate was going to befall them, and the promise of their death and or exile, and then a consolation at the end that eventually the people would return. And then Ezekiel in the vision is brought back to Babylonia. He alongside the divine presence which departs from the temple. Kavod Hashem departs the temple and goes to an eastern hill. And then simultaneously, Ezekiel himself in the vision is brought out of the temple, out of Jerusalem, and returned back eastward to Babylonia. And just as God has departed from the temple, Vaya'al Kavod Hashem, then Vaya'al Hamar'eh Asher Ha'iti, the vision which Ezekiel saw, lifted off from him. And then the last verse of chapter 11, Va'adaber el hagolah et kol divrei Hashem asher herani. I said, kind of this collective general sense, I said to the exile, meaning the exiled people, but sort of spoke out into exile all the words of God. And then, of course, we noted this, the unexpected ending. Instead of the words of God, which God had told me, it's the words of God, Asher Herani, which God had showed me. And we had an emphasis on the visual dimension of this prophecy, much more about what he saw than about what he heard, even though both were important. Chapter 12 begins a lengthy section of prophecies of the destruction of Jerusalem, without any particular consolation in them. And we will have more of the things we've seen from Yechezkel so far, calling him Ben Adam, son of man. Oh, I see Ellen's writing in about having difficulty getting Estelle. Wish I had a simple way to help. And nothing's different today than the usual way of joining the class. So hopefully it can work. Thank you for trying.
Is Ruby on?
Ruby's here in person.
Oh, good. Okay.
The two of us are sitting together in the shul lobby. So
Thank you.
Hi,
Miss you,
Ruby.
Ellen. Miss you,
so
okay.
So at chapter 12, we're going to see more of some of the characteristic features of Ezekiel, his being referred to as Ben Adam. We see a series of brief prophecies or messages. We'll see kind of symbolic action, prophetic theater, like we've seen. And we'll see particular reference to one figure who's not mentioned by name, and we'll try to unpack who that is, and what the dimension of that prophecy is all about. Okay, so let me share my screen. Oh, looks like Estelle is arriving. Okay, Estelle, hopefully, even though we don't see your video yet, hopefully the fact that you're on means you can hear us, which is great progress. We're just about to start chapter 12 of Ezekiel. So here we go. I'll share my screen.
Damn it. Okay, you hear me?
We hear you. Don't worry about a thing, Estelle. We all hear you.
Okay,
And,
good.
we're glad you're here. Even if your video is not on, don't worry about it. We hear you.
I
And
even
hopefully...
see you, but I guess I'm not on. But anyway,
All
at
right.
least I'm here. Okay.
You're here. Present
And
and accounted for.
I didn't get your original message that you were gonna be here.
I'm sorry about that. It certainly was sent to your email, but maybe somehow it didn't get all the way through.
It didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, we're glad you're here now, and we're just beginning
Thank you.
chapter 12. So you're not even
Thank
late.
you.
And thank you, Ellen, for all the hard work to
Yes, thank you.
It's like the halt leading the blind. You have to
Okay.
understand.
Well, here we are. Here we are.
Thank
Again,
you.
if for those who are able to come in person, then you never have to deal with technological issues. Sometimes there are our own challenges about getting there in person, but no Zoom issues if you're in the room. So, okay, so chapter 12, it's here on the screen. And Elaine, will you start off the reading for us?
The word of the Lord came to me. O mortal, you dwell among the rebellious breed. They have eyes to see, but see not, ears to hear, but hear not, for they are a rebellious breed. Therefore, mortal, get yourself gear for exile and go into exile by day before their eyes. Go into exile from your home to another place before their very eyes. Perhaps they will take note, even though they are a rebellious breed.
Hmm.
Carry out your gear as gear for exile by day before their very eyes, and go out again in the evening before their eyes as one who goes out into exile. Before their eyes, break through the wall and carry the gear out through it. Before their eyes, carry it on your shoulder. Take it out in the dark and cover your face that you may not see the land, for I make you a portent to the house of Israel. I did just as I was ordered. I took out my gear by day as gear for exile, and in the evening I broke through the wall with my own hands. In the darkness, I carried the gear out on my shoulder, carrying it before their eyes.
Okay, good.
In
Let's
the
pause there. And Lance, do you want to just do the next portion? Go ahead.
Yes. In the morning, the word of the Lord came to me. O mortal, did not the house of Israel, that rebellious breed, ask you, what are you doing? Say to them, thus said the Lord God. This pronouncement concerns the prince in Jerusalem. Is that Zedekiah?
That's the good hypothesis. Yes.
And all the house of Israel who are in it. Say, I am a portent for you, as I have done, so shall it be done to them. They shall go into exile, into captivity. And the prince Zedekiah among them shall carry his gear on his shoulder as he goes out in the dark. He shall break through the wall in order to carry his gear out through it. He shall cover his face, because he himself shall not see the land with his eyes. Is Ezekiel taking the role of Zedekiah here?
I think that's another good hypothesis. Keep on going.
I will spread my net over him, and he shall be caught in my snare. I will bring him to Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans, but he shall not see it, and there he shall die. All those around him, his helpers and his troops, I will scatter in every direction, and I will unsheathe the sword after them. Then, when I have scattered them among the nations and dispersed them through the countries, they shall know that I am the Lord. But I will spare a few of them from the sword, from famine, and from pestilence, that they may recount all their abominable deeds among the nations to which they come, and they shall know that I am the Lord. The word of the Lord came to me, O mortal, eat your bread in trembling and drink your water in fear and anxiety, and say to the people of the land, thus said the Lord God concerning the inhabitants of Jerusalem in the land of Israel, they shall eat their bread in anxiety and drink their water in desolation, because their land will be desolate of its multitudes on account of the lawlessness of all its inhabitants. This is not good. The inhabited towns shall be laid waste, and the land shall become a desolation. Then you shall know that I am the Lord.
Okay, good. Perfect pausing point. Ellen, will you do the last portion for us? Go ahead and unmute.
I see you, but now I don't see the
Okay.
thingy.
The
No
word
worries,
of the
Estelle. We see you, so don't worry about it.
The word of the Lord came to me. O mortal, what is this proverb that you have in the land of Israel, that you say the days grow many and every vision comes to naught? Assuredly say to them, thus said the Lord God, I will put an end to this proverb. It shall not be used in Israel any more. Speak rather to them, the days draw near in the fulfillment of every vision. For there shall no longer be any false vision or soothing divination in the house of Israel. But whenever I, the Lord, speak what I speak, that word shall be fulfilled without any delay in your days. O rebellious breed, I will fulfill every word I speak, declares the Lord God. The word of the Lord came to me. See, O mortal, the house of Israel says, the vision that he sees is far ahead, and he prophesies for the distant future. Assuredly say to them, thus said the Lord God, there shall be no more delay. Whenever I speak a word, that word shall be fulfilled, declares the Lord God.
Okay, great. So this is an interesting chapter, 28 verses, not too short, not too long. And we can see that it divides into a number of sections. Really, I would say three central sections. The first is the prophecy, the prophetic theater of exile and its explanation. The second is the short little bit about the limited diet and its explanation. And then the third, which is really considered much separate from the first two by the commentaries who divide up the chapter, the third is this notion of correcting or responding to the people's perception of prophecy as something which doesn't always come true or comes true only in a faraway time. And to say, in this instance, these are things which are absolutely all going to happen and all going to happen soon. So I think that's just the short executive summary of the chapter. And we're going to go through some of the specific verses and make a few different points. So starting off here in the beginning, Vahi devar Hashem elai lemor, chapter 12, verse 1, the word of the Lord came to me. Ben Adam, we have our usual term. And Ezekiel is told, Betoch Beit HaMeri ata yoshev. You dwell amongst the rebellious breed. Literally here, Beit HaMeri is the house of rebellion. So, you know, you're situated amongst these people. The prophet often has to be reminded, you know, and I think there's 2 points here. One, to remind him about the rebellious state of the people all around him, but also to remind him that he is in their midst. In other words, you have a responsibility to stand against these people, and also you are connected to them, right? Arnie, thinking of Arnie today, who often talks about that role of the prophet being kind of pulled between God's wishes for the people and an identification with the people. So on the one hand, the prophet's being told the people in whose midst you dwell are rebellious. On the other hand, remember, you are in their midst. You have some responsibility vis-a-vis them and relationship to them. And we get an interesting description of who they are, or what their reality or the nature of their rebellion is in verse 2. They have eyes to see, but see not, ears to hear, but hear not. Einayim lahem lirot velo ra'u, oznaim lahem lishmoa velo shameu. So this may ring a little bit of a bell.
Yes, it does.
Yes, can you place its similar language, Elaine?
No, it sounds like Shakespeare, but I have no idea.
So interesting. So what I was thinking about, you know, we just completed the longest stretch of time, consecutive days in the year in which we recite Hallel, which is Sukkot. On Hanukkah, we have 8 consecutive days in which we recite Hallel. On Sukkot, we have 9, because we have the 7 days of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah makes 9 days. And then really just a week after Simchat Torah, we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, in which we also recite Hallel, although there it's not the complete Hallel. But we're in a stretch of time of Hallel. And in Hallel, we say, Hallel is a series of psalms, consecutive psalms from the book of Psalms, 113 through 118. And in 115, which we don't say on Rosh Chodesh, but we said on all the days of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah, we say in Psalm 115, verse 5, Einayim lahem velo yir'u, oznaim lahem velo yishma'u. They have eyes but cannot see, ears but cannot hear. Before that, we also say they have mouths but cannot speak. And after it, we say they have noses but cannot smell, hands but cannot touch, feet but cannot walk. They can make no sound in their throats. Now, what is being described there in Psalm 115? It's what it says in the verse before that. Atzabehem kesef v'zahav ma'aseh yedei adam. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands, which have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see, ears but cannot
Oh,
hear.
yeah.
So the psalmist uses this description, of being endowed with physical sensory characteristics, but they're not functioning, as a criticism of idols. Ezekiel here is using it to describe and criticize the people. The people have eyes, but the examples that are brought here, the people have eyes to see, but they can't see, ears to hear, but they can't hear. Now, presumably, if we follow the traditional assumptions, Psalms were written, that Psalm was written after Ezekiel, so it's a play, on Ezekiel, on the idols are, the same as the people here, but I almost want to read it in the opposite direction. Ezekiel is borrowing language which is sometimes used to describe idols. They have eyes but can't see and ears but can't hear, and saying that's how human beings who actually can see and actually can hear, but are not utilizing those sensory organs. That's how the human beings, the Judeans, are being described here. That's what it means to be a rebellious breed. It means not to use your gifts of senses to see and hear what's really going on. So that's what verse 2 lays out for us. And then in verse 3, we get the therefore. And again, I would say amongst chapters, this is amongst the chapters which has the most repetition of words and phrases. It's not uncommon to see mortal repeated, Ben Adam, Ben Adam. It's kind of what introduces every stage of a prophecy to Ezekiel. But as verse 3 begins, we're going to start to get a series of phrases that come up over and over again. Gear for exile, go into exile, and do it in the sight of their eyes. In Hebrew, it's the klei gola, it's the galita, going into exile, and it's the le'enehem, before their very eyes. That's what verse 3 tells us, that now Ezekiel is being instructed to do something. I see a couple hands. I'll go just a few more verses and then take some comments. Ezekiel is being instructed to go get gear for exile, klei gola. Now, ask yourself, what is gear for exile? The Gemara asks this question too, and what it seems to be imagining, we're not told at all any specifics, what it seems to be imagining is kind of the bare minimum necessities that you would take, just watching the impact of Hurricane Melissa and seeing people, displaced from their homes and having to grab just a few things. Obviously, it's a familiar trope from many calamities, natural disaster or war or otherwise in human history. People have just a few minutes to grab bare necessities and take with them. And that's what klei gola seems to be. A blanket, a bowl, and a stick, things like that are what the Talmud talks about. The things that, if you just have minimum, if you don't even have shelter, but you need just a few things to get by, what would you bring with you? So that's the gear for exile, is a few things you could take on your back to, if you're leaving your home and you don't know where you're headed from there. So get that gear for exile and go into exile. And there's this strange phrase to do it yomam, by day. I think this has two potential implications. One is we're going to see whether it's day versus night. And the second is the kind of by day means something that's, visible to all. So do it in a way that's not, we're also going to see the impact of darkness a little bit later, but, do it in a way that everyone can see what's happening. Do it by day. And it might also have a repetitive sense. Yomam might be day after day, right? It might be, we can't tell for sure. It might be that this is a one-time theatrical prophecy that Ezekiel is being asked to carry out. And it might be that he's being asked to do this in a repetitive fashion. Every day, I want you to get up, grab a few items, put them on your back, and walk out, in front of the people. And then the next day, do it again, and the next day, do it again. That's how some of the commentaries interpret yomam, not just by day meaning in the daytime, but on a daily basis. Go into exile. Again, we're in verse 3. From your home to another place. El makom acher. It doesn't even seem to really matter where that place is. The point is the displacement from your home. It's theater. Go to a different location. Displace yourself in front of the people. La'enehem. We're going to see that la'enehem, to their very eyes, multiple times. maybe they will take note, even though they are a rebellious breed, right? Because in verse 2, we saw that the definition of a rebellious breed is they have eyes to see, but they see not. But do it in front of their eyes, and maybe, even though they tend not to see with their eyes, maybe this will draw their attention, right? So the context is people who are not seeing or hearing the message. So the message has to get more and more visual, more and more in your face, more and more extreme. And that's what Ezekiel is being charged to do. And then we go on to verse 4. Carry out your gear as gear for exile by day before their very eyes, essentially just a total repetition of the previous verse, all the same phrases, and go out again in the evening before their eyes as one who goes out into exile. And then again, before their eyes, verse 5, we have a third instruction. So we have go out in the day with your, with your exile. Sorry, when I put up my thumb, my Zoom does a little thumbs up. When you go out by day with your vessels for exile, go out by night with your vessels for exile. And now a third thing, all to be done la'einehem, before their eyes. Break through the wall, chatar lecha vakir, behotzeta bo, and bring your vessels out through it. So you're not just going to another place, but part of the exile has to involve breaking a wall. We have to think about why that will be the case. Okay, do that again, all la'einehem, verse 6, verses 5 and 6 both begin with the words la'einehem. Verses 3 and 4 have it in the middle of the verse, but verses 5 and 6 have it at the beginning of the verse. La'einehem, before their eyes, carried on your shoulder. Ba'alata, in the darkness you shall take it out, and you should cover your face so that you may not see the land, for I make you a portent to the house of Israel. And now we're going to find out, what is that portent? What is the sign? What is the message? We'll come, sorry, it's just a few more verses away. First, we are told that Ezekiel carries out the instruction in verse 7. I did just as I was ordered. I took out my gear by day as gear for exile, and in the evening I broke through the wall with my own hands, all kind of phrase by phrase expressing that Ezekiel carried out what he was instructed to carry out. And in the darkness I carried the gear out on my shoulder, carrying it before their eyes. Now, by the way, I'll just note that the term darkness here, which we have in verse 6, ba'alata, in the dark, verse 7, ba'alata, in the darkness, and we have it again in verse 12, ba'alata, in the dark. That's a very unusual phrase. In fact, it appears only 4 times in the entire Tanach. 3 of them are here in this chapter. And the 4th time, I don't know if I pulled it up on... no, I didn't pull it up here, but I will read it to you, and it makes a little bashert. It's perfectly timely that we're studying this chapter this week, because the 4th and final time, or really the first time, that the term alata, darkness, appears is in Genesis chapter 15. That is to say, this week's Parsha, we're going to be reading it on Shabbat. In the covenant between the parts, in the Brit Bein HaBetzarim, Avram is told... just finding it. In verse 17, Vayhi Hashemesh ba'a, the sun was setting, va'alata haya, and it was very dark. V'hinei tanur ashan v'lapid eish asher avar bein hagzarim ha'ela. And a flaming torch and a smoking oven appeared, and a flaming torch which passed between these pieces. And on that day, God made a covenant saying, I'm going to give you the land. But that covenant came on the heels of being told that you're going to be strangers in a land not yours, enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, and only then will you go free. So there's a unique kind of darkness that accompanies the covenant between the parts, which is the promise of exile and then return to the land. And that darkness reappears only 1 time in the Tanakh, or in a cluster of 3 times, which is here in Ezekiel chapter 12, in the darkness of the exile from the destruction of the temple and the end of the first commonwealth of the Jewish presence in the land of Israel. So there is, I think, a very purposeful sense of the darkness of the original exile, so to speak, of Abraham from the land going down to Egypt, is mirrored by the darkness of the exile after the destruction of the first temple. That's what Ezekiel and God are channeling in this prophecy. Just to go a few more verses, and then we'll open it up for comments. So Ezekiel does it. He does what he's told. And now in verse 8, the word of God came to him and says, so did they ask you what you were doing? Were they curious about what this street theater is all about? Right? It reminds me, going to last week's Parshat Noach, the reason, the commentaries ask, why did Noach have to build the ark? And it seems like it might be, according to a particular way of reading the verses, that it took him 100 years to build the ark. And why did he do it? God could just have, fashioned it and dropped it right down. But the reason was that passersby were supposed to take note and say, what's this ark for? If you remember the Bill Cosby Noah routine, he says to them, how long can you tread water? Right? The purpose of the ark is because God's going to bring a flood and destroy the world, and maybe you should mend your ways so you'll be spared. Right? So these public actions are meant to evoke the curiosity of passersby. So God says, did anyone ask you? And from the fact that there's no answer, it seems like we assume that the implication is no. Nobody commented on this strange action of Ezekiel putting on his back of just a few possessions, leaving his house, breaking through a wall and going somewhere else. No one asked him what he was doing. So, okay, God says, they're not using their eyes to see. You're going to have to go ahead and tell them what this message is all about. And that's what happens in verse 10. Say to them, this pronouncement concerns the prince, and as Lance pointed out, that's presumably Zedekiah, King Zedekiah, Tzidkiyahu, and all the house of Israel who are in Jerusalem. And the message is, as I have done, this is what Ezekiel's supposed to say to them, just like I just did, grabbing my stuff and walking out in the day and walking out in the night and being displaced from my home, so shall it be done to them. Tell them, so shall it be done to them, to you. You shall go into exile, into captivity. And not just you, but the prince is going to be humiliated, have to carry his gear on his shoulder as he goes out in the dark. He's going to have to break through a wall to carry his gear out, and he's going to cover his face because he will not see the land with his eyes. And then God further says, he's going to be caught in my snare. I'll bring him to Babylonia, but he won't see it. And there shall he die, and everyone else will be scattered. And once everybody's scattered, then they will know that I am the Lord. And verse 16, I'll spare a few of them, only so that they can kind of acknowledge their wrongful behavior. And then we have again this refrain, V'yad'u ki ani Adonai. They shall know that I am the Lord. Before taking comments, just notice one more thing, which is in Jeremiah 39. In Jeremiah's recounting of the destruction of the temple and the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem, Jeremiah 39 says, it was the 9th year of King Tzidkiyahu, King Nebuchadrezzar, aka Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia, moved against Jerusalem with his whole army, and they laid siege to it. I'm reading here from Jeremiah 39, first few verses. And then the walls of the city were breached. The officers of the king of Babylonia entered. They took up quarters. And then when King Tzidkiyahu of Judah saw them, he and all the soldiers fled. They left the city at night by way of the king's garden through the gate between the double walls. And he set out towards the Arabah, but the Chaldean troops pursued him. They overtook him. They brought him before the king of Nebuchadrezzar of Babylonia. He put him on trial. He had Tzidkiyahu's children slaughtered. And then the eyes of Tzidkiyahu, this is verse 7 from chapter 39 of Jeremiah, were put out, and he was chained in bronze fetters that he might be brought to Babylon. So now we understand that exactly what Ezekiel prophesies is going to happen, which is that a prince, i.e. the leader of the Jewish people, i.e. Tzidkiyahu, is going to go out in the darkness and have to break through a wall and will not see the land with his own eyes and will be brought off to Babylonia, is indeed what Jeremiah testifies. That's not a prophecy in Jeremiah. It's Jeremiah's actual description of the events. Sure enough, Tzidkiyahu tries to escape through a wall. He's captured. He's blinded, so he cannot see the land. So this prophecy of Ezekiel, of what's going to happen, which is, again, being told not to the people of Jerusalem. It's being told to the people in Babylonia. They're being told, here's what's going to happen to your brethren in Judea and Jerusalem. This is happening there in Babylonia. They're being told about what actually is to take place in the destruction of the city, which happens in just a few years' time, presumably. All right. I see Lance's hand, and I know Ellen had a comment, and then Ruby. We'll start with those three, and then Estelle. Great. Lance,
Okay.
Ellen.
Okay.
Yep.
If you think about it, you have the five senses, the most important of which probably is seeing. And that's one of the main themes of this chapter. And one of the things that you can do is to compare what Jeff Benner, for example, calls the concrete versus the abstract. And the concrete would be seeing, and the abstract would be something like faith. And that's one point. Another point is that, first of all, this is all poetry. I mean, you got parallelism, you got chiasmus, um, you got it's almost entirely poetic. And but the thing that fascinates me most is behind all this, you have an author. And I'm going to make the academic assumption that the author is not Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a front for someone. And one of the things that hit me about rebellion, if you look at the Torah, two of the most important rebels are Korach and that kid that disobeys his parents. What happens to both of them? They're both killed. I think the kid is stoned. Am I correct?
Yes, the wayward and rebellious son, the Ben Sorer Moreh. Yes.
Right, right. So it seems to me that this is all about an author who did something wrong, maybe disobeyed his parents. We obviously will never know. And this is all about handling that guilt.
Okay. Fascinating. Fascinating reading. Thank you. Ellen, I think you had a hand up.
No, you're in here.
I go back to the idea of gear. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that, and I understand what gear meant in
Yeah.
this context, but I've never seen it used before. Well, I mean, God would always say, you're going to be, I'm going to exile them, or I'm going to take them out of the land, or I'm going to forbid them from being in the land. But I've never heard him say, okay, pack your bags, you're on your way. And I'm sort of struck by the difference. It's almost as if they're walking down this path with their suitcases. And the other thing is the breaking of the wall that I don't remember ever hearing before.
Yeah.
And it's very jarring. It's almost, I don't know. I mean, the suitcases bring up the Holocaust for me. And I don't even know what the breaking of the walls bring
Yeah.
up, but
Yeah.
but the suitcases really, I think, bother me more because it's very, very specific. And that's the image that I keep holding in my head of these people
Yes.
being pushed to the train station carrying their
Yes.
gear. And how come this is the only place that I
Yeah.
know of anyway?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think I don't know how to express this exactly right, but I think you're hitting on exactly what the purpose of this prophecy is. In other words, the extent to which you're jarred and unsettled by the, evocative imagery and the kind of graphic nature of it is exactly what it seems like God is trying to get at here. God is saying, I've sent all kinds of messages, I've sent all kinds of warnings, they're not listening. Let me show you what it's going to look like. Let me play you a video of what this is gonna actually be. And if you don't, like the exact comes back to Lance's point about the visual sense being the most profound or powerful sense. Sorry, we have a little lobby background noise here. Hopefully you can still hear me well. So, so the sense is like when you could hear it described, but when you actually see it happening, then you kind of viscerally feel, oh my gosh, like what would it feel like if that's what's really going to happen to me? So I think I think this is like the last resort kind of thing. And again, remember, it's not everybody doing it. It's Ezekiel doing it as a symbol. The people are supposed to watch and imagine or understand that this is what's going to happen to them. So I think your troubled response, I think, is what God was going for. Now we could say like, it's so harsh, that's for sure. But I do think your troubled response is like, and pointing out how extreme and uncommon this is having the desired effect, is I guess the best I could say. Ruby's next, and then Estelle, and then I see Graham's hand also, and then Carl. Yeah.
I feel in this chapter that darkness has a degree of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the fact is that for the human being, darkness enables us to rest,
Mm-hmm.
to have a resurgence of energy. And so it prepares us in a sense for the new day. And so I would like to think of darkness also in a much more positive light.
Yes. It's a beautiful comment, and I think it's true to our experience more. And I just think in the ancient world, it's not that they didn't recognize the importance of rest. Of course they did, but I just think darkness was a frightful time. It was a time of so much vulnerability, so much of a sense of danger, and we are generally much more secure and protected and have artificial light that we can introduce into the darkness, so we don't feel that it's a time of lack of control. And so I agree with you. I think our modern association
as well.
Yes, I think our modern association with darkness is much more flexible. And I think in the, in the ancient world, in the biblical world, it generally had a more frightful connotation. Maybe not Erev as much, maybe not evening as much, but choshech and this term alata, have that heavier sense.
Darkness allowed people to hide from their enemies.
Right, darkness. Yes, darkness did allow people to hide from their enemies, but they didn't know if they were going to be found out. You know what I mean? It's just, they didn't know they could hide, but they couldn't see their enemies who were looking for them either. So, but I agree with you. I'm supportive of in our time of having a much more flexible sense of what darkness is. But biblically, I think by and large, it's was a time of danger. Now that said, the Exodus happens at midnight, and so it was also a time of deliverance, no doubt. And the rabbis have a whole big debate in the Talmud. Was the deliverance in the nighttime or was it in the daytime? But even there, the nighttime deliverance of the Jewish people was because it was a time of punishment for their enemies. So it's always a little complicated. And I'm sure that I've lost track of my speakers list, but we're going to go Estelle, Graham.
Yeah, I have a
Yep.
question.
Good.
I
Questions,
mean,
welcome.
my question is if Ezekiel and all the people in Jerusalem was so terrible, and God sent the rest of the people out to Babylon, why would the Jews in Babylon be any better than the ones in Jerusalem? I mean, why not just try to make everybody better? Because just to send the Jews out in Babylon, they would be just as evil as or practicing bad stuff as the people in Jerusalem. What would be the difference? And why exile them? Why not just try to help them while they're in Jerusalem?
Yeah. I agree with you that a little part of this chapter is a little bit confusing, because the prophecy of, enact exile, and see if they ask you what's going on seems to belong.
I'm sorry, but that's sort of a very poor excuse. Say, well, I'm going to send them to Babylon, and everything is going to be sweetness and light. That's not right. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yes, I think you're asking a slightly different question than I was starting to answer actually at first, but I'll sideline that one, the one I was answering, and just say, I think, remember, there were two waves of exile, and it's not clear whether that had to do with who got a greater punishment. It just seems like the the leaders were mostly exiled in the first exile, and then folks were left to see whether there was any remnant that would be able to be preserved and, you know, preserve the land. I'm not sure that one group was really any worse than the other.
That's my question.
The behavior persisted, and the second wave of exile took place. But I don't have the sense that that we're, you know, really fundamentally differentiating between those
Well,
groups.
my feeling is that it's a poor excuse for the explanation of why the Jews went into exile. It's a poor excuse to sort of justify it.
Yeah, yeah. So as always, I appreciate that. As always, you know, we look at the text and we say, you know, this is a religious text. So this is attempting to place some type of, you know, moral religious frame around the events
Fooey.
of history. And it could resonate or not resonate. That's okay. That's okay. Absolutely. All right. I'm sure that I've lost track of our order, but I think actually Carl was next. Then we're going to go to Graham, Mom and Dad, and Leela. Help me remember. Carl, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you started answering my question, but you didn't quite get there. What is the purpose? Who is he speaking to? If he was in Jerusalem, it would make some sense, right?
Yeah.
Showing them what's happening. But he's in Bavel,
Yeah.
speaking to people who had already been exiled. So
Yes.
I don't know what message he's supposed to give.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's complete.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to
Oh,
convey.
Okay, good. Yeah, so to be quite honest, I'm really not sure. I think it's an excellent question, and I have to see whether I did not notice commentaries on it. I'm just taking a moment just to peek at one thing, because it does really seem like this is, I mean, we know that he has been now returned, even in the vision, he's been returned to Babylonia. And so what's the function of saying this to the Babylonians?
Yes.
Okay, if I had to speculate, I would speculate it's two things. It's one is two or
It's
three
just
things.
it's justification.
Well, so always I think we could look
And
at
I distrust that. I'm sorry, I distrust that.
totally fine. Your distrusting approach is welcome. No, not a problem at all. I accept that. I accept that possibility. To this point, I would say perhaps it's a message to the exiles to say to them, you know, you have no control over this, but this is what's happening to your comrades back in Jerusalem. Maybe it's a message to them, you know, this is actually a consequence even of your actions. Not that, again, there's necessarily anything they could do about it. Maybe it's sort of a message of, you know, you still have to take heed and do the right thing so that you will one day be returned. But those are my initial reactions, and I do want to do a little more digging to see what comments have been made about this question. I'm going to jot myself a note. Why deliver? Okay, I think Graham was next.
Okay, am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Okay. Yeah, I got another poem out of this. Here it is. Oh God, my God, I have a complaint. Bad things are happening. Good things, they ain't. My heart is so heavy, I think I might faint. I'm starting at shadows, afraid for my life. But how can you end the corruption and strife? A chaos so thick you could cut with a knife. Your wrath will suffice, though the end won't be nice. So bring on your justice by way of your grace. Though bones may be broken and many lose face, our resolve we must strengthen and double the pace. Though life is confusing, we can't lose this race. The world is too cold, the darkness too real. Ezekiel screams out the way that we feel. When hope is in exile, it's so hard to heal. God, bring on your wrath to no longer conceal. We stand in a storm at the onset of fate. Let's stop all the dithering talk and debate. We all seek the truth. Zedekiah won't wait. So thank you, dear God, if your wrath is our fate.
Graham, you are the greatest. Absolutely the greatest.
Very powerful and
Wow.
reflective. Thank you. Thank you. And go ahead and pop it into the chat so we can send it out for next week. Thank you.
Okay, it's a long one. I hope it'll fit.
Yeah, it'll fit. It'll fit. The chat has
He
plenty.
is really. Have you ever published his poems? You should do so.
They're not my property.
Wonderful.
They're for Graham's to
Graham,
do.
do that.
Right.
You're wonderful.
Easier said than done.
Are we going to come to Mom and Dad and then Leela? Go ahead, Mom and Dad.
So I was thinking about the word for darkness repeated 3 times in Ezekiel, and then it was used in the covenant between the pieces. So I knew that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all prophets, but I never really made the connection between that and when God speaks to them, that's a prophetic vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about when God tells Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, what does Abraham do the next day? He gets up early and he saddles his donkey and he cuts firewood and he takes fire and he takes his knife. He's taking his gear, he's following on what God told him to do, and is doing the same kind of thing that Ezekiel ended up doing. I think it would be interesting to look at these incidences in the Chumash where God speaks to different people and look at them as prophetic visions and to see what they do afterwards, how they carry them out.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, certainly one that also comes to mind in the context of a kind of a vision in darkness or nighttime is Jacob's dream, with the ladder. And he, again, he awakens and he has the revelation of God's presence, and his reaction is to make a vow. So not, and he's certainly also on the road with very little. All he has is his walking stick, as he reflects back later. So there definitely seem to be similarities between these. I'm also remembering, I think when Yaakov prepares to go back home, it's also described as a vision in darkness, b'mar'ot halayla. I just want to take a second to see if I'm remembering that right.
Also that interesting detail of forgetting those clay pots or whatever it was.
Yes.
And then Jacob had to go back for them.
Right, and then in his
of the gear.
Yes.
Stuff that you're on the road with.
Yes, pointing out the when Yaakov has his encounter with the Ish, he also goes back in the night, and Rashi comments that he's gone back for small jugs or something like that, and that also evokes this clay gola, these vessels of exile.
2 different incidents.
Yes. All right, I'm not finding it right away. The Mar'ot Halayla, look for it time. But yes, excellent. And just to say one further comment about this, which is where the boundaries of visions end and narrative begin. The Rambam, for example, famously attributes more of the things in Breshit, for example, that we typically read as narratives, he reads as visions. So he reads the visitors that come to Avraham, and announce the birth of Yitzchak at the beginning of Parshat Vayera as a vision. And in fact, if I remember this correctly, we have to look in Mark Shapiro's book on censorship. There are versions of the Rambam, or maybe commentaries on the Rambam, that suggest, to your point, Dad, that that even the Akedah, the entire Akedah story might have been a prophecy, might have been a vision, and not an actual narrative which took place as such. So there's a lot to unpack in those questions. But yes, I think
that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, all right, good. Of course, most people would say that they can't believe that and it's heretical. So of course, Estelle, to you it makes sense. Great. Okay, let's see. Leela, please.
Yeah, that's really good what you just said, because it kind of fits in with, I was just thinking while we were doing the learning that all of the light and the darkness and the home, exile, and it's really not, I mean, I just hear it much more as a representation of a kind of a spiritual experience or journey, you know, to kind of try and understand everything too literally. It just doesn't seem, doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like we've been talking about, you know, what does darkness mean? And isn't it kind of darkness is an experience that we have on a psychic level? I think, I mean, I'm not really asking a question. I just wanted to, but then when you just said about Rashi, it just made me think, oh, okay. So my understanding is it could be a way for understanding it too.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I think one of the things that's interesting, circling back also to Ruby's comment about darkness, is, you know, the darkness is this fearful, frightful time, but it also seems to be the context in which visions of God generally take place. So, you know, again, there's those two sides. It's ironic or not ironic that's the time when God is most often sort of encountered, not in broad daylight, but in darkness. I think Lance had a hand a while back. Come to you, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. For me, the exile here exemplifies the vision of Jews that most people have had over the centuries, and that is Jews as victims. And if you compare October 7th, 1944 with October 7th, 2023, you will find that on October 7th, 1944, the Sana Commando, the Jews who basically cleaned up the crematorium, launched a revolt. And three women, led by Rosa Robota, got gunpowder into Auschwitz and destroyed crematorium 4. However, as a result of that, most of the Sana commandos were killed. Rosa Robota was hanged. Now I compare that to October 7, 2023. On October 6th, Iran had tons of missiles. In fact, they tried afterwards to launch missile after missile after missile against Israel, and they failed almost entirely. But they could have destroyed Israel. Hezbollah had enough missiles to destroy Israel. Hamas rained missiles down on Israel before October 7th. And all of these axis of evil were definitely decimated by the IDF. And it seems to me that the one major point is made by Bibi. Bibi said, the time for Jews to be victims is over. Today in the state of Israel, we defend ourselves. And today in the state of Israel, the IDF does defend the state of Israel. And I have only the highest praise for the IDF. And I just must tell you, as a personal note, that my grandson, Evan, will be joining the IDF as a lone soldier in January.
Wow.
Kala kavod. Wow.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Lance. Just saying Graham because I was simultaneously copying and pasting Graham's poem, so we'll have that for to be sent out on email. Okay, it's 11:05, so I think what we're going to do is pause here. We have sort of the second half of the chapter about about prophecy and correcting the people's misconceptions about when it comes true and how correctly it comes true. We'll try to pick up with that next week. Let me take just a moment to check my calendar. I think we should.
Is there no class tomorrow?
No class tomorrow. Today was in place of tomorrow, since I hope to be traveling tomorrow. So we won't meet tomorrow. And as I mentioned, also Rabbani Bracha is away this week, so her classes are not meeting. But next Thursday, the 6th, looks great for our usual time and place. And as always, wonderful. Great discussion, great participation. Thanks to all. Love to Mom and Dad, and looking forward to seeing you, and see everybody soon.
Thank you. Thank you.